Hello, hello. This is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello. Thank you for those who joining us. Hope you seeing us on LinkedIn, on X, on YouTube. Follow us, because I'm Irene Lakovetsky. I'm speaking with fascinating people in tech. And we cover all the way from AI innovation to automation reality to digital transformation, and fascinating people sharing their time, sharing their knowledge with me and with you, my audience. So Gary Bolles is here today. Gary, how are you?
I'm great, Irene. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. I'm incredibly excited because we do want to talk about AI, human collaboration, coexistence, living together, working together. We're going to cover mindset and tool set and cultures and everything that comes with it. So, Gary, what do you think is happening right now in this broad topic that just intrigues us all?
So I've had the gift of basically growing up in Silicon Valley. I first started working there in 1983. So I've seen many of the different cycles of technology through the years. And there's no question that what I often call the AI tsunami, this whole wave after wave of generative AI and related technologies is just moving at a faster and faster clip. And so I think for humans, we're not normally well designed to be able to deal with things changing so quickly. So we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to either think of these tools as continually requiring people to learn new skills and automate a lot of work and make it very challenging for people, or we can think of them as tools that actually help us to develop superpowers and to be able to solve new problems. So I think a lot of the negative rhetoric in a lot of the headlines it's very transformative, but it's also going to have a lot of negative impacts on people. And I'd prefer that we're all encouraging the people who develop the software and the people who use the software to use it in ways that are more human-centric.
Beautiful. What does it mean? What does it mean? Let's start with organizations, right? We're a business channel, we're a technology channel. We want to see all sides of moving parts because, of course, innovation doesn't wait. Okay, leaders being bombarded with new options and with new shiny demonstrations and toys. Yeah. How to really differentiate between those that are like kind of buzzwordy innovations versus the real improvement in organization life, in society even.
Oh, absolutely. So first off, I have tremendous compassion for people who lead in organizations nowadays. I don't think many would have wished that there would be first a global recession, then a global pandemic, and now the AI tsunami. These changes just seem to keep coming, and there's tremendous pressures. So a lot of people who lead organizations have pressures around trying to have the most productive workers, to be able to generate value for shareholders, to be able to generate revenue. And when the world's changing so rapidly and the technology is changing so rapidly, it can be a little challenging to stay on top of those things. And the pressures can actually encourage people who lead organizations to use some strategies that can be very challenging for humans. So if you think of these tools as doing nothing but helping to increase productivity, that is, you can get more work out of people, or to even automate tasks, you don't even need the people anymore, then I'd say those maybe aren't the best results that we can hope for if we're going to remain human-centric. And instead, what we want to do is help people be more effective in their work, to be able to continually solve new problems. And the tools then can help to amplify people, can help them to learn new skills, develop what I call superpowers, this sort of intersection of what you're good at and what you love doing. And the tools can actually be ways, empower ways that you can have the skill set that you need, not just today, but tomorrow, to be able to create value for the organization's stakeholders.
That sounds easy, okay? That's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy. It's not easy. I talk a lot about learning, okay? Many of my guests bring up this topic, right? The incredible opportunities out there, right? easy to learn, seem to be lower entry barrier for everyone. You don't have to even have a technology background unless you're really into deep developing new innovation solutions there, which are not everyone. So my question will be for you, Gary. What are some of the skills that we have to unlearn? Because in previous industrial revolution, right, we've been trained and we excelled in a lot of things that we've been praised for. So in AI-driven world, what should we unlearn, you think?
So first off, I think it's important to step back and look at history. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme a little bit. And so just think about an organization. Think about an organization chart. Think about a hierarchy. Think about the role of the manager. And all of those we've inherited from the industrial era. As a matter of fact, the organizational hierarchy goes all the way back to the time of Alexander the Great. And so if we want to unlearn some of the things that make it very challenging in a world of exponential change, we need to first be reconsidering, well, maybe the way we structure our organizations, maybe the way we structure work roles, certainly the responsibilities and the process that we put on the shoulders of people who lead others, those are all processes we can unlearn. The way we did it in the industrial era is not useful in this era for most organizations. It may be the way that many who lead organizations now learned as they were moving up through the ranks. But instead, I think that we can embrace some new models. So first off, I say the role of the person who leads, who manages, who supervises in the past, you can think of that almost like what my friend Esther Wojcicki mentions in her book, Moonshots in Education. She says that's sort of like the sage on the stage. Like in the past, the manager, the supervisor, the leader had to have all the answers. And in a world where increasingly we're using these amazing breakthrough tools, such as generative AI, it's an opportunity to change that model dramatically and to move from the sage on the stage to what I call the guide on the side, the team guide. So I actually don't typically use words like manager, supervisor, or even leader. I use them as verbs. I mean, really what the opportunity is to encourage people to come up with a new model for leading. The more that you, as somebody who leads a team, understand the mindset and the skill set of the people that you're in the team that you're leading, the more that you think of the tool set you need to provide them, and increasingly that's going to have in many work roles something to do with generative AI. The more you think of yourself as empowering others to solve problems, that's a completely different model. I call it the next model. And so that team guide has a variety of different new skills in being able to be great listeners, being able to ask great questions, being able to continually find ways to empower others to develop skills, to be able to become problem solvers. In the past, the way that leader or manager used to judge themselves was how many problems they solved. And I think in the future, the way we will judge ourselves is how many problems never reach our desks, how many problems others solve because we have empowered them to be problem solvers.
That's a fantastic thought, so automation is not doing the same, better, faster, and just actually with less human on mind even involved. It's rather something else I'm hearing. Is that true, Gary? So transformation is not just including new tools, it's basically thinking differently.
Absolutely. So as I say, it's always important to just sort of step back and take a look at these processes that we follow and the ways that we've thought in the past. And so in the same way, we need to reevaluate this whole idea around corporate hierarchy and the structure of work roles, especially people who lead teams. We also need to look at what work is and what we want to design work to be in the future. So work is really simply just three things. It's a problem to be solved. How do we solve problems? We perform tasks. How do we perform tasks? We have human skills. So that's kind of it. We have human skills that are applied to tasks to solve problems. Well, what is the way that most organizations approach work roles is they talk about tasks, like the steps you go through. Now, there's no question that generative AI and a variety of tools, ChatGPT, Midjourney, they can help us to be able to perform tasks more rapidly or more effectively, or maybe we don't have to do certain tasks that we did in the past. But what's really important for people who lead organizations is to focus on the problems to be solved and the skills that we need people to develop or to have to be able to solve those problems. And the tasks, we don't need to worry quite so much about. So certainly we want to be able to all be more effective in our work. And that might mean when you used to have to take 10 steps to solve a problem, you can now take 5 steps or even 3 steps. And increasingly with the new flavors of, we call this AI, but it's really not artificial intelligence. That's just a marketing label. It's really a set of different kinds of algorithms and kinds of programs. And generative AI is sort of the flavor of the month, but the coming flavor is called AI agents or agentic AI. And that's where you'll be able to take these tools and several of those tasks that you used to perform in the past, you'll be able to have more software do those tasks. So where you used to do 10 tasks, software might actually perform 5 of them in a sequence, and that will save you even more time. All of those are awesome deliverables for organizations. But if we only focus on trying to be more effective and do fewer tasks and be more productive, we lose the mindset that what we really want workers to do in the future is to be really dynamic problem solvers. We want them to be able to solve problems they never encountered before. And so that's really the opportunity to leverage these tools. But you're right. Digital transformation is never about technology. The technology is simply an enabler. I talk a lot about mindset, skill set, and tool set. It's just a tool set. You want the mindset and the skill set of people who work in the organization to be focused on those people continually transforming, those people continually developing new skills and learning to adapt.
What about codependence here? Okay, I'm challenging you, Gary, in this conversation because what I hear happening in the organizations who are comfortable using their legacy applications, you know, every organization is a bunch of tools. It's a whole stack of technology they acquired over the years, right? And people got used to working certain way. So they want to innovate, but you know what? Every day the customers require the service, right? They have to perform. Yeah. So time to experiment is really, really narrow, okay? So to reality, kind of how leaders can overcome the pressing idea of innovation with really push back from those who really affected by those changes.
So absolutely. So first off, there are several really important points that you've brought up. The first is how different people are affected and how we help them to be able to deal with these changes. So the more we think of humans as continually developing new skills, and the more the organization is committed to that learning process, the cost of that learning process, and the understanding that there's a delay, people learn new skills, and then it takes a little while for them to be able to apply them. The more organizations sign up for helping people to be able to continually navigate those changes, the more they'll have the skill set they need tomorrow. Another aspect that you brought up is what happens when we automate a lot of tasks. So let's say you lead an organization and suddenly you start implementing generative AI tools, and overnight you've saved 20% of all the tasks that needed to be performed before, and people have 20% more time in a week. What are your decisions as somebody who leads an organization? You could give every worker a day a week to be thinking up new products and services. So the time you were talking about for innovating, if you've gained a lot of time because you're using these tools, why wouldn't workers just use that time to innovate? Well, Google for years has had a program called 20% time. And that literally has given engineers the time to spend a day a week and think up new products and services or ways to be able to deliver better value to customers. If you're leading an organization and you suddenly have 20% more time of your company's people, you could give them a 4-day work week. You know, there's a study that's just been done in the UK by thousands of small businesses, and many people love having a 4-day work week. They love having an extra day that they can be doing more things in their personal lives, and they don't mind packing a lot more activity into the 4 days of work. Or you could do what many companies in the US do, and you could lay off 20% of your workers. And then what you find is there's all these new skills you needed. And if you had just trained those workers with those new skills, you wouldn't have to go look for new workers. But now you do. And now you've got all the cost of trying to go find them and hire them and to make sure that they have the skill set you need. So these are all rational decisions. But what I encourage people who lead organizations to do is to think of all the ways you can actually create more of that safe space for people to be able to innovate, to develop new skills, to be able to come up with new ways to be able to solve your customers' problems. And as my friend Charlene Lee says, not just the problems of today's customers, but the problems of tomorrow's customers, to have your workers continually thinking about who is our future customer and how can we provide value for them.
For me, I am like getting all the information from the business social media, from articles, from people I'm speaking with, is basically how to avoid that AI tool fatigue. Okay, because looks like companies in this rat race of getting new tools, they're popping up here and there. So what's the good advice there? How to evaluate, how actually stay sane?
Yeah. So first off, the what's really, really important is that people who lead organizations can take a step back, take a deep breath, and think about, well, what are some of the best ways to be able to, on an ongoing basis, understand these breakthrough technologies, have the strategy for how they can be best applied, have processes for how people within the organization can experiment with them and then figure out the best ways to apply them, and then to be able to scale the use cases that are most valuable for the organization. So I don't care whether that's the internet or cloud computing or generative AI or agentic AI or any future technology, such as quantum computing. I don't care what that breakthrough technology is. If you have a process in your organization, if you know how to be able to continually adapt your strategy and determine the best ways to be able to leverage these technologies, then you can resist that fatigue process, because then you won't just keep grabbing at each bright, shiny object. You will have people within the organization who will continually learn the new tools, experiment with the tools, and then make determinations whether or not they're useful to you. And so that's a very important process to have in place, and it has to involve a range of stakeholders inside the organization. This is not rocket science. It is all about people. But you have to have that operating system. You have to have that kind of cookbook for the ways you go through understanding these technologies and figuring out where to apply them. And then just don't get sucked into the latest headlines about the next whiz-bang technology and feel that your organization suddenly has to implement it.
Speaking of future of work, Gary, all right, you mentioned the definition of work. Okay, and we kind of still in very much industrial era mindset, for sure. I am myself, okay, just speaking for myself here. So should we redefine, you think, work in a world where AI automation, and so many traditional tasks being changed in front of our eyes?
So it's really important in the same way that I suggest organizations have a process, a strategy. It's really important as individuals that we all have a process, a way that we're thinking about our careers, thinking about our work. And so we find over and over again, going back literally 50 years, I was trained as a career counselor when I was 19 years old. And if you go way, way back, the processes of determining some of the most important things in your work have actually not changed all that much. It often starts for most people with something around a sense of meaning or purpose. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody's work has to be anchored in the most purposeful thing you can think of, the purpose that you're here on the planet. I mean, that's wonderful if you feel that you can do that. But it's more, what is it that drives you? What is it that makes you want to get up in the morning and do your work? And I often call that a North Star or a Southern Cross. What is it, the sailors centuries ago, when they didn't have a GPS and they didn't even have clocks, they still were able to kind of get where they were going by watching the stars at night and following that North Star, or in the Southern Hemisphere, the Southern Cross. So think of that in your own work. The more you have something that pulls you forward, and that could be skills that you want to use, that could be problems you want to solve, that could be the kinds of people that you want to work with. What everybody who leads in an organization should want is that everybody who works in their organization has that North Star or Southern Cross for their own work. Why is that important? Well, the world's going to keep on changing. We're going to keep on having these breakthrough technologies. You want people to have some through line, something that pulls them forward. You also want everyone to be a lifelong learner. Carol Dweck, in her book Mindset, she talks a lot about a growth mindset. And so the whole idea is that each of us, if we have that pull forward in our work, then we can continually feel that we are learning and changing and growing and adapting. And it's only when we have more of a fixed mindset, that's really that industrial era mindset, where we're not committed to growth, where we want to keep doing the same work over and over again. There's nothing wrong with that. But in a world of exponential change, the world can change around us. And if we can't continually adapt, then we're going to be at a disadvantage.
Let's talk a little bit about workplace utopias and dystopias, okay? So please, draw a picture for us. What's the best case scenario in AI human workplace, and how to avoid the worst case scenarios?
So I'll just tell you, I'm sometimes accused of being the word police. And so I know there's a lot of headlines that you read, and a lot of sort of the discussion is to start to think of and talk about this AI tool set as if it's a coworker, as if it's an employee, as if it's somebody, some tool, some piece of software that's working beside you. And I just have to tell you, I just have no time for that kind of language, because I think every time we raise our technology, we diminish humans, right? So these are tools. And some of them are really flexible tools, but they're not my coworker. They're not my assistant. They're tools, and they're technologies. And so the dystopian version is where more and more people who lead organizations say, oh, I'm going to hire a bunch of AI employees and I'll fire all my human employees. And then eventually I'll have such an effective organization, I just won't even need to pay humans anymore. Well, that's not the future I want. I want a future where humans are always doing meaningful, well-paid work. And so what's really important is for us to continually have the mindset that we're not going to leave any human behind. Instead, what we need to do is commit to how these tools will empower humans. And therefore, hey, great, give me more tools, give me more ways that I can solve problems. That's the utopia. That's really where humans are doing meaningful, well-paid work. And all the boring stuff is what's really getting automated by AI and its related tools.
What about your personal reflection? Okay. What about your vision, how to redesign that work? You mentioned some of the elements, right? You mentioned how to include people, not to exclude. And people, we're humans. We become more engaged when we see the value. All right. Yeah. So the point is, where is this fine line between, of course, becoming more productive, right? Doing better job in shorter period of time, right? And at the same time, creating that ideal workplace that actually reflects, on us being human.
So if I said what I thought work is, it's human skills applied to tasks to solve problems. Jobs, work roles, typically have sort of 6 factors. And it might sound like they're hard to remember, but they're actually quite easy to remember, because in English, they're the 6 W's. What we do for work, where we do it, when we do it, how we do it, that's a W, with whom we do the work, and why. So I just talked about why, that North Star or Southern Cross, right? So, but what you do for work, the problems that you solve and the kinds of skills that you use, where you do it, when you do it, with whom you do it, how you do that work, all of those are factors. Now, imagine that I gave anybody listening to your podcast a magic wand, and they could design every work week where they could determine the 6 W's, what you're doing for work, where you're doing it, and so on. And that could be a collaborative process with your team. So what if every week or 2 weeks you went through that process? Where are we going to be working? What are we working on? Who's going to be involved? And that flexibility was constant. You could keep on redefining that every few weeks based on the work to be done. That is what all the research shows humans want. They want to be able to have the flexibility. They want to have the agency, the empowerment to be working with members of their team to determine just all of those different factors. And now there's some work that's very repetitive and you don't have a lot of flexibility. Somebody's got to be there to deliver the food to the tables at the restaurant. But there's plenty of other work where you might even give flexibility as to which shifts people might use. You might break up jobs, so it's not just waiting tables, but it's also working on bookkeeping or anything that makes work interesting for people and gives them the variety. We know that humans thrive on variety, and especially that they're compensated well for the work that they do. So that is increasingly one of the opportunities for people to lead organizations. How do you push that decision-making process into the hands of teams and not just have these mandates like you absolutely must be in the office 4 or 5 days a week, or you absolutely must be using this facility here and just because we happen to have the facility. And you can't be having a reasonable life. If you've got to take your kids to a soccer game or to the doctor, more and more of those mandates, that's bungee cording back to the industrial era of work. And many workers, especially young workers, are saying, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to do that anymore.
Exactly. Well, that opens up whole another chapter. Okay. I hope we can meet again and talk about newer generations, because all the answers I'm getting right now that they're born with it. Okay. They don't have all the grudges or all the previous background, so they don't have to overcome anything. It's just the new nature of work. So what do you think about it?
So I often say I don't use phrases like Gen Y and Gen Z like that. I don't use labels like that. But I do say, and I spend a lot of time with young people nowadays. I say I don't think it's a new generation. I think it's a new species. I think it's a completely different set of motivations. I didn't grow up with a digital distraction device that was placed into my hands when I was just a couple months old. I didn't have social media. I didn't have access to virtually anything I would want to watch on a device that I can carry around with me. And so that has created a totally different set of influences and opportunities. So one of the things that people who lead organizations often have a hard time with, I spend a lot of time with the C-suite of companies around the world. They ask about this purpose thing. So, and I think we've already talked about that North Star or Southern Cross, but they ask about this flexibility thing, and especially if young people don't like the answer about what the purpose of the organization is, they quit and they go someplace else. Well, in mathematics, that's called optionality. The whole idea that I'm doing this thing, but I could do this other thing. And what's the cost if I do this other thing? Well, in the past, there was a lot of cost associated with that because you have to switch jobs and you have to go find a new one. But nowadays, young people, they know when their friends are working on a startup. They know when there's a better boss than the boss that they have now. And so they actually feel that they often have much more optionality. And people who lead organizations who were trained in the industrial era model often have a hard time just getting their hands around and their minds around this process of young people, especially feeling like they have options. And so that does take a different mindset, takes a shift in mindset where you actually are helping young people to understand the purpose of the organization, the value you create for your stakeholders. And then you're also helping them to have more of that optionality. Companies like Google, for instance, when you get hired, for instance, in marketing, you actually date around to different groups to find a match between you. Many organizations are much more project-centric than just job-centric, and they actually want workers to be working on 2 or 3 or 5 different projects with different work groups. And all of those approaches create much more vibrant work environments and build much, much better connections between workers.
Exactly. So there's a lot we still can do. And yeah, this is absolutely inspiring conversation, Gary, we're having here. In conclusion, okay, could you maybe share the example that kind of surprised you? Okay, how well we work with AI or any other tool help, and how well it turns out in, making everyday's life better and simply more enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we're on the cusp. We're at the beginning of seeing some use cases for the tools that could really help to make people's lives better. I just completed a study. My group Charette, we just completed a study looking at the use of AI in helping people to learn so that they can get jobs. And there is a tremendous range of innovation of tools like career chatbots and coaching chatbots and that sort of thing that will all just keep getting better and better. And so we're going to see more and more of those kinds of tools that will actually be very custom tailored to the needs of different people. And more organizations will use them, I believe, to help people to be able to go through that learning process, to be able to have their own learning assistance process, especially with the support of these tools. And I've been really positively surprised and very hopeful about some of the opportunities that can come out of the use of these tools to help with the processes I was just talking about helping everyone to be able to have that North Star or Southern Cross.
Sounds like, Gary, we just scratched the surface today, okay? The topics we talked about, they're broad, they're deep, okay? There are lots to explore. So I encourage everyone to follow Gary Bolles on LinkedIn. Get to know Gary's book, The New Rule of Work, Gary, right? Could you talk about the book a little bit?
So yes, so the next rules of work, the mindset, skill set, and tool set to lead your organization through uncertainty. I wrote it during the COVID era because I thought this was going to be what I call the great reset of work. And of course, that's what's happened. And the basic premise of the book is that if you lead an organization, you want to be able to help encourage the mindset and skill set supported by the most useful tool set to help people to continually navigate change. And what is one of the greatest challenges of leading an organization now is uncertainty. So the more you can have the operating system, the process of empowering people throughout the organization, the more you can deal with the various scenarios of whatever the future brings.
Fantastic. Time is flying, Gary. Thank you so very much for joining me here today. Maybe a few words, few takeaways for the audience to remember this conversation by.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say for every individual, whether you lead in an organization or you lead a team, or your opportunity is to see this as an inflection point for having that process. I mean, if there's anything I want you to take away is that it starts with mindset. And part of that process with the mindset is being able to be continually flexible, being able to continually have an approach that you can use, that you can leverage, so that you don't keep on thinking of yourself as being sort of the subject of these changes. You actually you leverage them. You can feel that it's empowering you. That's really one of the major takeaways I'd hope for, is that you can feel that, yes, it's going to keep on changing rapidly, but nobody is up to speed. Nobody knows everything about all these tools. So just focus on the tool, the technologies and the processes that can be most useful to you in your work.
Thank you.